Thank you for tuning in. It's my great pleasure to welcome all of you for the first episode of Qube Events interview series. Our special guest today is Elie Beyrouthy, who is the Vice President of European Government Affairs at American Express, and also Chair of the Executive Board at European Payment Institutions Federation. Elie specializes in banking, international law, negotiation, EU institutions, and government relations. Hi, Elie. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you, Marta?
Thank you. I'm good. Thank you so much for taking time to meet with me today and share your expertise with us. As we all know, the effects of the COVID-19 for the global economy and the financial sector are pretty challenging. The financial services leaders are in need to predict how will the banking sector look like after the pandemic, how to innovate, how to use the novel technologies, and how to adapt the business strategies to stay ahead the industry changes. What do you think? How is the global crisis influencing the operations of the fintech and regtech firms?
Well, listen, the crisis we're still going through is unprecedented, and it has, both challenges on everybody, right? On a personal level, on a company level. And then if we talk from a business perspective, fintechs and regtechs, are facing great challenges, but at the same time, a lot of opportunities. And when we think about the challenge is really how, to make sure you can pass this period from a financing perspective, from being able to still serve the consumers, and also the company's need in a good way. But then I guess at the same time it's an opportunity, because this crisis has shown the importance of digitalization in general. And I think fintechs in particular and regtechs are in a great place to help the whole society transition through this phase and go more digital.
Yeah, exactly. I totally agree. And if we're into the challenges that, of course, we can use as the opportunities, what do you find as if you can call the three biggest fintech challenges that the industry is facing now? What is keeping awake at night the financial services leaders?
If I want really to sum it up, especially when it comes to financial services executive, and especially the smaller ones, it's the access to funding. Access to funding is the biggest challenge that companies are going through right now. So fintechs, regtechs, startups have been hit by this current crisis, right, to a large extent. But in contrast, maybe to other industries, they have struggled, to access coronavirus support schemes, due to the EU state aid rules, right? So this is really a particular problem here they are facing, because several governments they have offered schemes to support R&D or encourage venture capital investments, but several of those programs actually they demand that companies pass an undertakings in difficulty test. Yeah, this is a bit how in competition law, you have this test of undertakings in difficulty, it's called. And this test is designed actually to prevent member states from, propping up failing businesses with state aid. This is the reason why this is there. But the issue when we have here is that you have a lot of venture-backed tech startups that start operating at loss, right, in order to grow. And the biggest challenge right now, as I said, is really this access to funding, and hopefully this is pretty dramatic actually for the sector.
Yeah, it's probably the matter of time and innovations as well. Yeah. So as we just told as well, the digital transformation and the power of this digital regulatory data is like the key in the modern world, that's especially now in this crisis that just pushed all of the digital solutions a bit more, and how to make it applicable to the everyday work.
Well, I'll mention one particular example here. I think that could to make things really clear. I guess a first obvious application, here is digital regulatory reporting. Digital regulatory reporting could be really important because this is challenging for the regulator and for the industry at the same time. And I guess if it is done well, it could help regulators, perform effective supervision, monitor financial markets and detect financial crime. So this would be a very, very clear to create a common data model and a data, delivery mechanism.
Yeah. And at the last Qube webinar, we were talking about the financial technologies and the strategies ahead. And what do you think how the financial technology is stepping into help in the response of the coronavirus?
I'll give you one example maybe from the payments industry, and that's related, to what we call contactless payments. And we've seen, during the the crisis, like there has been a huge demand from consumers, but also from public authorities to go further into, helping and fostering contactless payments. The reasons are obvious, medically speaking, and I would say from a health perspective. So you didn't want consumers to be touching any key. Consumers, wanted to continue shopping, but at the same time, there has been a demand to increase the limits that are I would say were applicable before the crisis. And for me, a great challenge, and at the same time an opportunity, is how you can, as you rightly asked, how could financial technology help in response to coronavirus? And for me, the fact that consumers were able to continue shopping using, well, either on e-commerce, but here even in physical locations, whatever that was possible, was to pay without touching any keypad, without having any interaction with cash, or having increasing the chances of getting the virus. So I guess this is a great example, and hopefully it will go beyond this crisis, because we have a lot of numbers that show that consumers want to keep using contactless payments. So we hope also regulators are gonna listen to that and then keep up this good cooperation that worked during the crisis.
Perfect. And what technologies could be introduced in order to make it easier for firms to interact with regulators at a lower cost and administrative burden?
Well, here I would say online interaction. Yeah, again, one concept. Online interaction is really key, and this could have different, I would say, different applications. I mentioned in your previous question, the possibility of digital regulatory reporting. This would be really helpful, and for both sides, the industry and regulators. You could think about a lot of new technology when it comes to e-identity. You could think about, again, eKYC, know your customer, in order to do onboarding of clients or meet some anti-money laundering requirements. So I would say going into more digital, going online, developing online tools, secure tools, should be the way forward.
Okay, so if we're into this topic, what can be done to minimize the exposure of the cyber attacks and keep these client data safe? How to adopt these high security networks?
Listen, let's face it, when you have shifts in the industry, so going from one area to another, so here in this particular case, I've been advocating for more online, interaction, more online, commerce, and so on. It is natural that the risks would increase, because fraudsters and other criminals would shift with the business. Wherever the business shifts, they would go with it. So for me, it is, and this is known by all stakeholders, right? So your question is regarding cyber attacks and what to do to deal with that. And for every business, it is essential to protect customer data, at least if we talk about the payments industry, where I come from. So we have in place for sure adapted rules, but the challenges in terms of cybersecurity have increased. So what I can promise you, and this is what all providers are doing, are they are really increasing the capabilities and all the systems they have in place, and upgrading and so on. But this is an ongoing challenge. And what could be interesting here, I think, and important from the part of regulators and policymakers is to also take up this challenge and make sure like we're somehow regulating the outcome. Yeah, the outcome is we don't want attacks to happen. We want to prevent them from happening. So we don't want fraudsters to be able to get to the money and to get to the consumer funds. So this is what is important, and the regulation should be just focusing on the outcome. So making sure like whenever fraud is not there, whatever fraud is low, the rules should be adapted to that. So you should have some flexible regulation from that perspective. But again, the aim should be, I'm not calling for anything like deregulation. I'm calling for regulation that is adapted with the objective that is pursued. So not to put a burden on businesses, but rather to make sure they are protected and they are investing in the right direction to prevent cyber attacks and fraudsters from getting to the consumer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course. And how the industry is ensuring the business continuity in these challenging times?
Right, I might have addressed this question already in my previous answer, but for me, again, it's you have different levels. You need again to adapt your plans, yeah, because the threats have increased, will increase, and will continue to increase, given the trend that we discussed few minutes ago. So we need to adapt the tools that would somehow be adapted to these challenges by hiring more people, by stepping up from a technology perspective, from just taking these matters, I would say, to the level they deserve, right? I mean, I would give you a sort of comparison with again anti-money laundering and terrorist financing, like from a few years ago, from 20-30 years ago. So at the beginning, these threats were not essential, I would say, on the financial system. I'm talking here about maybe the 80s was the start, of this new challenge. And then if you look at the compliance departments back then, in banks and in financial institutions, and you look at compliance departments like 30 years after that, you would see a huge shift. And I guess this is most likely what's going to happen, right? In the area of cybersecurity. Like this is going to be an increasing threat, an increasing challenge, and again, companies need to adapt to this and then adopt, the necessary rules, requirements, but also manpower and technology, etc.
Yeah, and because like obviously the virus changed a lot in terms of the workplace and employee needs. Most of the companies probably will still keep this business model as like working remotely, working from home, and how to adapt the policies and prepare for this future workplace and the employee needs.
Here I think the biggest learning, at least when it comes to employees and what happened, during this crisis, is that many companies have been forced, or they had to, accelerate the transition for their employees in terms of working from home or teleworking or whatever you call it. To give you a concrete example, for the company I work for, American Express, we have globally like 65,000 plus, employees. And in a matter of days, I would say, we were able to move every employee, to work remotely. And did anyone, thought about this before the crisis? No. Was this planned? No. But then, given, the challenge raised by coronavirus, because the safety of employees was extremely important for us, then we had to accelerate, to adapt. And that now after the crisis, well, we have now a proof point, like we could work as technically a virtual company, right? So again, this would allow, us to think more about what the future looks like. But again, you would need more flexibility, most likely, I would say, in terms of, working times, and then, physical locations. And so all this is part, I think, of a reflection that is currently happening. And I would think this is the same in many companies, global or local. Like, it's the fact that now it's much easier and possible to work remotely. I mean, again, it would depend on the industry, but at least in the company I work for, this is definitely something that leaders will be looking at. But flexibility in the workplace would be, I think, essential. So the time you spend, working from home or remotely, or working from a physical location.
Yeah, great. And our next webinar is The Power of RegTech. It will be on June 24th. And the webinar will reveal the challenges, the drivers, and emerging trends of the regulatory technology. And which of the existing regulatory compliance requirements do you think would most benefit from the RegTech?
Let me mention maybe two areas here. I mentioned some of them previously, but KYC, know your customer, and I would say customer onboarding. So these two areas are really key. And these, you have, the technology is there. We talk about the identity, we talk about, other possible solutions. So these areas are really key. What would be needed in addition to focusing on these challenges is to have something, I would say, common across the EU. If we're thinking about the European Union, for instance, is to make sure like all these technologies could be applied, across the EU, and not, having to comply with different member states and their regulations there, because this would mean like more difficulties for companies, to apply these rules, on a regional basis here, talking about the EU. So KYC, customer onboarding.
Okay, two strong points. And what are your expectations from the next Qube webinar or event, physical ones, hopefully one day?
Listen, I've cooperated with you, for the last few months, and one thing that is clear to all those who participated in your events is that you are extremely professional. The discussions are always on the topic. You are able, to gather the right experts, those who are, I would say, knowledgeable about the issues. They know how to present things. So I only expect this to at least the same standard, meaning like excellent discussions, the right people, being there, and great outcome for all participants.
Thank you so much. Thank you. We promise a great atmosphere and the content for sure. So yeah, you can count on us. Thank you so much, Elie. It was a pleasure speaking with you. And yeah, many thanks. Hopefully we'll have a chance to meet again and again in the future.
Thank you for having me, Marta.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.